Good evening, my friends. Today, today is the day that the Lord has made. So we are excited about that. I wanted to share about submitting to governing rulers and authorities because I've been thinking about what's going on in America. Okay. And I'm not going to get on the, Christian nationalist train of exalting America over over Christ or confusing America for the promised land. But there is something to be said about the psychological warfare that is going on in our nation. And I think that it's important for us as Christians to be aware of what the enemy is trying to do. Whether this enemy is just the Antichrist, Satan, spiritual principalities, or just our enemies in the world. I don't even know who our enemies are. Probably a lot of people: Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, whatever. But that being said, I want to make a point about how uh, there is an intentional dividing of our nation, and part of what the enemy is doing is placing a distrust in the government system of America. Romans 13 says, everyone must submit to the governing authorities, for all authority comes from God, and those in positions of authority who have been placed there by God. So anyone who rebels against authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and they will be punished. So that being said, I'm thinking about, you know, basically on the right, there's all the movement of saying that the election was rigged, there was fraud, and there's a place of distrust in the government system because now we're saying that you know um, that the voting thing doesn't work, whatever. And then on the other side, on the left, there's this movement to say that the system is systemically racist and can't be trusted, and it's not equal, it's unjust. So on one hand we see but on both ways, either way you look at it, there is a distrust in the government system, and there's an intentional that is an intentional psychological uh, weapon that our enemies are using against us to place distrust in the government that God has put over us in America. And what's interesting about that is, you know, both ways, it's really an attack on that authority and on the government system to say that it's untrustworthy, that it doesn't work, and that it's, there's no point in thinking about it. And also, it's, on a larger scale, like the left, is probably the ones saying that, there's voter fraud and all that stuff to cause the right, the people on the conservative side, to not trust the voting system and then not vote. So then when we don't vote, or whatever, conservatives don't vote, people who are Christian, have values and morals, and want to pro-life, and don't want to see, children get transgender surgeries, and whatever. To me, it's pretty clear the way that we have to vote. I'm not a Republican, I'm not a Democrat, but I'm going to vote Republican because of the values that I believe in, and the core values of, pro-life and protecting children, and not allowing them to, choose to be a man or a woman before they're 18. So anyways, but that being said, I want us to just see that God has put us in America, and we are to submit to that authority. And as long as it's not uh, causing us to reject Christ, like Paul and Peter and all those guys, they submitted to the governing authorities, and they allowed the authorities to, even when they were doing something that the authorities told them not to, because they had to do it to share the gospel, which they were commanded to do. And then the commandment of God surpassed the commandment of men. Even when they were rebelling against the commandment of men to fulfill the commandment of God, they still subjected themselves to those authorities and put themselves in their hands and allowed themselves to be arrested, imprisoned, beaten, or even put to death. They still didn't fight against the authority. Okay? There's a push and a movement in America today to say that we can fight against the authority if it's in contradiction to what we believe God's laws are. But that just is not the case. I just watched that movie Civil War yesterday. It's at the theaters. Just came out, but it's to me kind of prophetic about what America will look like, and it's going to be what the end of America is if we don't get a handle on our hatred towards one another and our division, and if we can't come to terms with the fact that I don't even know what we can do, because it seems hopeless, but and it seems like we're destined for that civil war because of the division. But for us as Christians, we shouldn't be getting caught up in that, and we have to be careful not to be getting on a political side or whatever it is, but to just try to stay in submission to the American system, the government system, within the confines of being able to still share the gospel, whatever that looks like. We don't want to find ourselves fighting against God. Okay. Just like whenever Israel was attacked by Babylon, and Jeremiah was telling the people, listen, surrender to Nebuchadnezzar. Surrender to Nebuchadnezzar and your life will be spared, because Nebuchadnezzar was the new authority that God was putting over the land, and he was telling the people to submit to him. So in like manner, no matter what happens in America, we have to submit to the authority. And we are not called to go to war. We just need to surrender our lives and be ready to see the Lord, and know that our hope isn't in this place. But and we need to see that there is an intentional turning against the authority that we're placed under right now. I don't know who it is. I think it's probably foreign interest in our nation to see our nation destroyed. And there's a lot of psychological warfare, a lot of conspiracies, a lot of things going on. But just submit to the authority that we're under, as long as it keeps you from, as long as it doesn't keep you from keeping the commandment of God. Obviously, the commandment of God surpasses everything. Like when they shut churches down, keep going to church. You know what I mean? If they shut your church down, keep going. If they tell you not to preach Christ, keep preaching Christ. If they tell you whatever it is, if it keeps you from obeying God, you have to obey God rather than men. But use wisdom and discernment, and know for certain what is obeying God and not men. Amen.